allowing me to record. Okay, so welcome again to the session. The session's being recorded. Just a little bit about me. I do work for a number of clients on a freelance and consultancy basis. I've been in digital marketing for 18 years now, working on various projects and strategies as a consultant, and firstly working in industry. I've worked here and overseas. I am chartered with the Chartered Institute of Marketing. My background also, I've got a postgraduate diploma and an MBA, but I've got 8 years of experience as well of leading courses and teaching and supporting students with the various business marketing and innovation qualifications. So working with universities, working with the Oxford College of Marketing, working with the CIM, and also try and get involved in course and training development. So we've seen quite a lot of innovation and a lot of changes in the courses over the last 10 years or so, because things have had to become increasingly digital. So I've been fairly involved in that and stay quite heavily involved in the course materials update. So just to give you a background on me, we'll now give you a background on the Oxford College of Marketing. Welcome if you're not very familiar with the organisation, and we're really happy to have you here for the lockdown lunch and learn. But the Oxford College of Marketing as an organisation, we've got 20 years of experience in delivering marketing, delivering digital marketing, sales and project management courses. So delivering qualifications from those bodies such as the Chartered Institute of Marketing, sales management, project management, and so on. We've got over 2,000 students a year that are studying with us. And we're really proud of our 95% pass rates that we have got. And those students are from around the world. So we've expanded to set up 19 global study centres now. And we've got an extensive online learning platform. Obviously, everything that's going on at the moment, every one of our students are now working on a distance learning basis. So that was just to give you a background on the Oxford College of Marketing. We set up these lockdown lunch and learn programs just in response to students. There's some students who've been furloughed, there's some students who are spending more time at work, distance, maybe using Zoom. So we wanted to sort of try and get to the bottom of the main things that students were looking to learn in a kind of bite-sized fashion. Perhaps you've got a little bit more time than usual to work on your digital marketing. And this particular session was looking at 6 things that you can do to check and improve your website, particularly at this time. So I just wanted to give you the benefit of my experience working with students, but also working in industry and working with the clients that I work for search engine optimization. And if there's one thing that I see, I don't want to sort of get too straying away from the subject at hand. There's one thing I see is that it becomes something that clients and students want to shoot straight in to do. They want to move straight into what should I be doing? How do I get to the top of Google? And this is something that you always need to take a step back and make sure that search engine optimization is something that is embedded into your overall digital marketing and your overall marketing planning process itself, and also making sure that it is in alignment with the rest of your business and your corporate marketing objectives. So just sort of put that into context. If you haven't done some kind of situation analysis and you hadn't taken into account the things that are happening in the world, you wouldn't be able to just blindly carry on with your search engine optimization. So we want to make sure that everything that we're doing with regards to SEO isn't just shooting in, it's part of your overall tactics. So let's just take, if we move on to the next slide, and we just remind ourselves that search starts with a problem, and there's obviously quite a funny predictive Google screenshot there. Hopefully there aren't too many people looking to bury your body at the moment. But we are only ever, when we buy anything, we are always solving a problem. And this takes us into the arena of sort of consumer buyer behavior. If we have a problem now, obviously they vary in terms of levels of involvement, whether we're buying a packet of coffee or whether we're buying a BMW. We are always looking to solve that problem. Now, often people will say, our students will challenge this and say, well, I don't have a problem if I want a bigger house, or I don't have a problem if I want to buy a BMW. It's about thinking about the gap between your existing and your desired state. So whenever we do turn to the internet, and there's trillions of searches every day, we need to remind ourselves that search always starts with a problem. Sometimes I find my clients and my students, with regards to their SEO, rather than unpicking the problem that the clients are looking to solve, they will go straight into trying to optimize their SEO with regards to the product. Now, to just give you an example of how this comes into play, a couple of years ago we were burgled, unfortunately, and I looked obviously to increase the security within our home. There are a number of things that can solve that problem. We came across burglar alarms, we came across bell ringers that will go straight, bell ringing apps that will go straight to your phone and so on. We came up with various different locks, we came up with buy a Rottweiler puppy and so on. So we need to take a step back with SEO and think at the time, what is the customer trying to solve? And if Red just moves me on to the next slide, just putting into context in terms of making sure that it's part of your digital planning process. If we now, in the last week, do the predictive Google search for how do I, these are what we are now looking at coming up in the prediction. So how do I get tested for coronavirus? How can I make a face mask? How do I use Zoom? And some of us will probably count ourselves in that. I've probably had a very quick kind of baptism of fire with Zoom in the last couple of weeks. But the point I'm trying to make here is your customers are a moving target. The way that they're looking to solve those problems, the problems that they're looking to solve, the types of products and the services, and we just want to make sure that we understand that and how that evolves. So moving on to the next slide. If we start to just look at SEO as a whole, what is search engine optimization? How do we make sure that our website is optimized? How do we make sure that we're doing everything that we can? I think it's really important to understand that it is something that we've got to dedicate continuous resources to. And again, I see this as a common theme. Often clients will say, oh, well, we spent £10,000 on our website last year. Shouldn't that be it? Shouldn't that solve everything? It's got to be something that there's continuous budget given to, there's continuous staffing, resourcing. As I've just said, your customers are a moving target, the world is moving, your competitors are moving, your suppliers are moving, so it needs to be something that there's a concerted and continuous effort. Now, going back maybe 8 to 10 years or so, there was something called Black Hat SEO, and again, some clients, not all clients, are always saying, what's the shortcut? How can we get straight to the top of Google? And this idea of Black Hat SEO, was the idea that there was some shortcuts. There was sort of the idea of duplicating content. You used to see those pages that were like, we are plumbers in Liverpool. We are the best plumbers in Liverpool if you need plumbing in Liverpool. So those would be the sort of shortcuts. As that has updated, we are now, Google have recognised that, and Google will penalise your website for these kinds of practices. So what we want to move towards always is this idea of white hat SEO. So having that quality content, and of course this involves really understanding our customers, understanding how their needs evolve and change. Link building from quality sources, so not just link farming, not just stuffing links in for the sake of it. Making sure that all of our on-page factors are all figured out in terms of structure, in terms of housekeeping, and making sure that we do have that keyword density, but it's not keywords stuffing, as we can see there in the example from Black Hat SEO. So the bad news is there is no shortcut, but let's look now at some of the things that we can do if we move on to the next slide. So search engine optimization, when we think about making sure that our website is optimized, we want to think about everything that is split into 2 categories. So let's think about our on-page factors and then our off-page factors. So if we move the slides on to think about our on-page factors. Now with on-page factors, we need to understand the Google algorithms, and really put simply, they're the systems used by Google for ranking websites. It draws on a massive range of factors, and it is changed around 500 times a year. That being the case, unless it's something that you're reading around the clock, it is not going to be something that you can crack in terms of the code. Sometimes Google does roll out major updates, so for mobile optimization, such as the panda, the penguin, the hummingbird, and that brings in some very clear changes that we can take cues from. But in terms of consistent algorithm changes, just bear in mind Google are a company, they're a beast of a company, let's say. They're making money by selling their advertising, so they're not going to allow us to crack the code in terms of organic SEO completely, otherwise they wouldn't continue to sell advertising. What we can do is continue to make the best efforts that we can with our on-page and our off-page. So if we look at just some of our on-page factors on the next slide, what we here want to think about is the structure really and housekeeping. So here we want to think about what is contained on the pages of our website. Now, I know in terms of clients that I've got and in terms of the students that I speak to, that all of you have got your own unique setups in terms of how your websites are managed, in terms of potentially there's external departments, potentially you've got outside agencies, you may have content managed systems and so on. All of our on-page factors, we want to make sure that we've got a consistent, good quality and fresh content. Google will see that that website essentially is a live, what's the right word I'm thinking of? It's an entity, it's keeping updating, there's activity going on there, and it will recognise that it's trying to serve up the best search results for its customers. So that good quality and fresh content. Keywords is something that we will go on to towards the end of this session, and making sure that you've got a keyword strategy in place, and again a concerted and continuous effort really in making sure that that is followed. The actual structure of your website in terms of page title and headings, URL structures, how that is planned out, and making sure that all of your images are optimized. And then we will go on to links and some nice things that you can, of course, mobile optimization. And this slide, no, that's fine, moving on, Red, thank you. This slide next shows us an ideally optimized web page. Now, what I'm not going to go into is too much of the on-page structure. What I have done, however, is put a really useful resource from moz.com at the back of the slides that allows you to go through a really detailed checklist to just make sure that all of your subjects are in the title tag, subjects are in your URL, you've got all of your image alt text, and there's just some really quick fixes that you can go through. In terms of going back to keywords as well, you can make sure that your subject and the subject that you're trying to get to is mentioned several times throughout the text content, throughout the text content. Really importantly, this takes us back to that idea of understanding our customers, understanding how they're changing, you know, what they were looking for a month ago versus what they're looking for now, or even quicker. And we also want to make sure that we link back to our category pages, so the way that everything is structured, and our subcategory pages. In terms of this, in terms of speed and in terms of mobile optimization, there is a lot of tools out there. There's free, there's paid for tools that you can use to give your website a sort of once over. So we mentioned link building just a second ago, and link building would bring us on from on-page factors to our next category. So thinking about how important link building again is key to building the traffic, it's going to boost your organic ranking overall, and thinking about the types of links, so not just looking at those poor quality links if we think back to that idea of Black Hat SEO, but also looking at how that link authority will help us, it'll give us higher value for our website overall, and also again how Google will identify that there's activity, there's links going on, there's things that are happening, this is alive and relevant and fresh website, and potentially is going to solve our customers' problems overall. So let's just think about the different types of links on the next slide, if we can. So breaking down into two categories really, we can think about our natural editorial links. We can think about this very much linked to our content. This is going to rely again on knowing our customers, knowing who our competitors are, knowing what matters, not knowing what's going on in the outside world. And we'll go on to content and keywords towards the end of the session. And there's also a really useful webinar, if you didn't join it last week, that Red did run, and that is linked on the same page as the recordings to these slides. Well, and Red was looking at a specific content strategy, and this would have an overlap into trying to get valuable content so that we do have those natural editorial links. In terms of an effort to do manual outreach link building, I have linked an article that I find really useful from moz.com that gives you a quite structured and quite strategic beginner's guide if you're going to look at some manual outreach link building there. But Google will recognize that, it will see those signals, it will help your organic efforts for sure. So moving on to the next slide. Very similar to review, very similar to links. We will also make sure, we want to make sure that we integrate reviews or testimonials on our sites. Now we need to think about who we are, the unique context that we're in terms of, I don't know what products and services you sell, I don't know what aspects of those are available online, I don't know how you deal with your customers at the moment and what journey they take, but we need to think about integrating reviews as best as we can and testimonials, and maybe thinking about offering sort of incentives, any kind of discounts that we can to just encourage that. And again, this is something that I find with my own clients. I'll ask them, you know, where do you put your glowing reviews, where do you get these great feedbacks, how do you make sure that they're incorporated on your site? Think about how you can do that. And also really important for this is using any kind of insight frequently asked question sections or any kind of forums where your own clients can not only talk to each other, because this is something that is going to help you from a resource point of view, with regards to helping them solve each other's problems. It can also encourage the facilitation and development of a online community, but it can also help us to understand what our customers are asking about. Now, in turn, understanding what matters to them can then, of course, help our keyword efforts, can then, of course, help us with our product and service pages and so on. And another thing you might want to do is potentially find a hashtag that you could use that was relevant, that was timely for either your marketing campaign, for your brand, and encourage others to use it so that that conversation can keep taking place. And then that's going to help Google see, it's Google and other search engines, I should say, don't want to be too exclusive to Google. It will help them see that there's that activity that is taking place. So moving on to the next slide, if we think about the next area that we can concentrate on, citation building is something that is really useful, but it's quite a resource heavy activity. The citations really simply are mentions of your website, the name, the address, and the phone number. You may also see this in wider reading abbreviated to NAP. This is on any other website external to yours. This could be sort of directories. They don't necessarily need to include any links to your website. However, where they hold importance is Google and other search engines want to see that this is wholly consistent. They want to see if the company name for you, they want to see if there's an email address for you, they want to see if there's a telephone number and a street address, that they're all consistent. Again, that way they're looking to make sure that they can serve up the most relevant results to their customers when they're looking to solve that problem that we discussed at the beginning. So just making sure that there's that consistency there. And it seems really simple, but often you will see street addresses. One says 52 Clover Street. On another website, it will say 50 to 52 Clover Street. One might have a hyphen in the area prefix for the phone number. One might have sales at for the email address on an external website. Another may have a personal email address. Another might have hello. Now, this is particularly important if anything's changing. It's a bit like the sort of equivalent offline of all of the things that you may have on pin boards and leaflets out and about. We want to make sure that anything that is on your website is consistent. And it can be structured, or it can also be potentially on blogs, news articles. Google will look for those signals and see that you are who you say you are, that you're reputable, that you are not, you know, sort of fly by night, and that they can serve you up. So moving on to the next slide, if we just think about how we can work that from a citation building point of view, and the benefits that will give us is, of course, improved visibility, but really importantly, local search ranking factors. Now, we are, as consumers, we are using more and more local search, and there's a couple of reasons for that. We're using our mobile, we're using more and more voice search. So we will say pizza's near me. We will use Alexa, we'll use other voice search to ask for particularly local answers to our problems. It'll also give us that trust and also provide any kind of opportunities for contextual marketing. Really important at the moment when you think of how quickly the world's changed and how people's needs have shifted, and that would help us there. So there's just a couple of ideas on the next slide that will give us some areas that we could look at. So of course we want to make sure that we're updated on all of Google My Business, all of your maps and so on. Just make sure that this is, particularly at the moment, I was looking at a company, I think last night or the night before, and it's been updated really. A lot of companies have updated, temporarily closed and so on. So we just want to make sure that everything along those lines from a local point of view is on point. There's a massive amount of local and national directories in your own area, particularly local businesses, businesses that look after various areas, products and services, potentially businesses that take on apprentices. There's employment websites and so on. Of course, blogs, local search engines, Yelp, Hotfrog and so on, local business associations, chambers of commerce. And what I've done there is I have linked a searchengineland.com article that gives you some citation sources. Hopefully that will just give you some inspiration really for looking at where you can build your links and citations. And again, Google will see this as signals. They will see all of this as consistent. They will see this as outside links into your website that will again help your organic efforts. Just make sure, if we move on to the next slide as well, just to make sure that this is managed. And my advice to you would be that you start small within your industry and vicinity. What you don't want to do is have something that's not manageable. It's a bit like if you've ever moved house, you know how hard it is to change all of your addresses, to change all of your details, to make sure that you've not forgotten anything. It's the same. So do just come up with some kind of system that works for you. I find just using a really simple spreadsheet for this, and making sure that they're updated every now and again. Of course, if anything major changes, make sure you've claimed and owned any available listings. So with regards to Google My Business, any other directories and so on. Include as much information as you can. This is going to help your search efforts. So in addition to your name, address and phone number, email addresses if there's any opportunity, potentially any social media links, but also if there's opportunities on those citations to have any kind of information on your products and services, opening and closing, images and so on. Don't spam. I'm sure none of you would spam, but do stay within the rules of the site owners just to make sure that you don't get any penalties, you don't find yourself blocked. And keep all the details as consistent as you possibly can, and take out any duplicate entries. You'll probably find as you start to go through industry listings and so on that there's various listings, potentially sometimes even the legal entity of the company changes. Try your utmost to not use any kind of PO box or virtual office on any sort of citation building. Again, Google just wants to see that you're relevant, that you've got authority, that they can serve you up with to the customers with that confidence. And as I've just said, just make sure you use that system, whether that's manual. If you're a larger company, you may of course use data aggregators. You may even be a company that's got a lot of different branches. Think about the likes of Tesco's and all of their branches trying to update all of their citations. So moving on to the next slide. The next thing I want to look at is content marketing. As I did mention a short while ago, Red did run a webinar that looked at how you can actually put a content strategy together. So I'd recommend that you review this as well if you didn't take part in that already. But what I did want to mention is sort of content marketing and its specific role within SEO. So really, obviously, of course, content drives organic traffic. Google doesn't recognize that you're content marketing. All it sees is that there's fresh content. It sees that you have added other pages whenever you do a blog, whenever you add potentially infographics, new product pages, and so on. Content does drive conversions, but again, it's about making sure that you don't just shoot straight in. We want to make sure with all of our content that what we are doing is looking to really understand our customer and really serve something up at a time that suits them, at a time that, if we think back to those slides at the very beginning, really solves the problem that they've got at that point. And we want to make sure that we can build our brand also, so raising our brand awareness, putting our brand in front of the customer, and also foster that engagement, foster that loyalty, build those relationships. Content can also be a really good opportunity to get feedback, and again, making sure that we use that feedback to feed into our SEO all of the time. If we understand what our customers are caring about, what they're worried about, what problems they're trying to solve, we can then integrate that into our SEO. And also improve trust and credibility, so position brands as experts and opinion leaders. There's a really good example of this at the moment, everything that's coming out every day with the government briefing at 5 o'clock, particularly several weeks back when it was around businesses and furlough employees and the employment retention scheme. One brand that is particularly being really effective at this is Martin Lewis. So from his money saving and his financial expertise, and he's built that through content. He's improved his trust and credibility, so quite literally the government press conference finishes and everybody shoots straight over to Martin Lewis to get his take on it, to get how he's translated it into something that is meaningful and can actually be sort of at a level that the consumers understand, and potentially small businesses and so on. And also our content can generate traffic, it can improve conversions and sales, of course, and just enhance our overall customer experience. So adding to that customer journey, thinking about the points along that customer journey that we can add that value, of course, and make their lives better, nudge them through the process and improve our conversions. So if we just move on to the next slide, we can think about some of the types of SEO content, and it's really useful at this point in time to just review, are you doing everything that you can in terms of SEO content at the moment? So are all of your product and service pages, have you got every kind of helpful piece of information on there? Is there anything that you can add to enhance the customer journey? Is there anything that you can increase customer satisfaction to foster that loyalty? Also thinking about our blogs and what we really don't want to do, and this was something that I found that there was a theme in terms of doing sort of 5-6 years ago. We don't want to blog for the sake of blogging. We've gone into clients before sort of a couple of years back, and people would just blogging to get a few pages up there, and often people will say to me, how long does the blog need to be? Well, it needs to be as long as the customer needs it, and don't just blog for the sake of it. Of course, any news items, any press releases, any kind of articles that you're doing, any lists, potentially thinking, 5 ways to utilize your products and services during lockdown and so on. Then you've got more of the sort of heavier stock, so the guides, white papers, downloads and so on. Again, depending on the type of products and services that you offer, depending on your customers, depending on what their needs, their problems are. And then of course, don't forget the sort of images, so any kind of videos, infographics, slideshows. We know all of the facts and figures on attention spans at the moment, and we know the videos massively growing in popularity. There's a lot of apps also that are driving that, sort of Instagram, TikTok and so on, of course, depending on your target audience. And then make sure that in terms of SEO content, we think about all of those directories and listings, and we've updated that. So I would just review Red's content strategy webinar for that, because that will help you, of course. So moving on to the next slide, let's just make sure at a bare minimum we define our goals for our content. We know our target audience, but understanding again that our customers are always that moving target. From an execution and channel selection point of view, of course, this is going to link really strongly to your resources. I know that you're all set up really uniquely. I know just from speaking to students and speaking to my own clients, often digital marketing is not the best area for being resourced in terms of staff, but also in terms of budget. So use your execution and your channel selection according to your capabilities. What you don't want to do is open sort of every door and not be able to manage that. And really importantly, that links us to that final point of just making sure that you're measuring, you're analysing. Sort of a lot of my clients will say to me, Sue, I'm really fed up, I wrote this article, it didn't even get shared on LinkedIn, I've written a blog, it's not viewed, we're writing great big emails that link back to content. So just make sure you measure, you analyse, you understand your customers' appetite for that content, you understand how that's shifting, you understand the channels that are shifting. I've got clients who were doing 2 years ago were doing 70% of their business on Facebook, and that's shifting across to Instagram. Don't forget, your clients are evolving and changing all of the time. Your clients, in terms of how they use their devices, the different channels, the different platforms they use, is changing all of the time. So always making sure you're measuring, always making sure that you do have those goals behind your content strategy will help your SEO efforts for sure. So if we move on to the next slide, just gives you a really brief example of a content calendar. Now, Red does cover this quite a lot in the webinar that she looked at, but sorry, the webinar that she ran last week. But I just want to talk about this idea of having some kind of content calendar. And if you are finding yourself with more time on your hands at the moment, this putting together of a content calendar, whether you are using something that is fairly sophisticated or whether you are using just quite simply a manual spreadsheet. I use manual spreadsheets just because I find it fairly easy to share between clients and so on. And just making sure that it gives you that not only opportunity to plan, but it also highlights those opportunities where potentially you can repurpose content and you can think, oh, okay, the last time that the weather went really sunny, we did this. The last time that there was a bank holiday, we sent this out. This will just make your life easier. Also, you can look on, your content calendar and realize that it's Monday again. Let's put something on about Monday motivation. It's Thursday. Let's go back to sort of throwback Thursday. It's coming up to Christmas. Let's do Christmas jumper day and so on. So it's again just a really good opportunity, and this will also, of course, help your SEO efforts. It will also give you some ideas for keywords. So moving on to the next slide now. The final thing that I want to talk about in quite a lot of detail is keyword research for our 6th area. And again, kind of going back to that idea on the logical idea of the digital marketing planning process. This is something I find that clients and students sort of want a very quick answer. What should I be doing in terms of keywords? How can I get to the top of Google? Firstly, we need to understand you need to be at the top of Google, and this taps into the idea of our keyword goals. What is it that we are trying to do? Now, of course, as with your content, this is going to be dictated to a large extent by the amount of resources that you've got. Keywords, again, are something that need a continued and consistent effort. So we want to sort of take a step back, be realistic about this, take a look at our situation analysis, what's happening in the macro, what's happening in the micro environment, what our competitors are doing, how our suppliers and consumers are changing, and so on, and establish a series of realistic and achievable goals for our keywords. When we've done that, we can then move on to our keyword discovery. So thinking about getting a list together, essentially, of the types of keywords. Now, go back again to that idea at the beginning of problems and the problems that you're looking to solve. So maybe you're not looking to serve up burglar alarms to your customers. Maybe you're looking to serve up home security. Maybe you're also looking to serve up increased home security, sleeping easier at night, keeping your family safe, and so on. So just don't shoot straight into your keywords on your products and services. It might be that your customers are further back in the journey than that, and they're not searching for those keywords at this point until they know about you. Once we've done our keyword discovery, we can then hone that down and develop a keyword list that's going to be based on the level of competition. So who else is looking at those keywords overall? We can look at relevance and we can look at volume. So what we mean by volume is thinking about the amount of times they're searched for. Then we can almost, I would guess, come up with a candidate list. So a short list essentially before we then select the keywords that we are trying to aim for. Again, this is going to be informed by how much resource you've got. Then, of course, integrate all of our keywords into everything that we're doing in our organic SEO. So this is going to have a lot of implications for our structure, going to have a lot of implications for links, for our content, and so on. And if you are undertaking any paid search, of course, we want to use those keywords throughout our paid search. And then what we can't do is rest on our laurels. We need to make sure that we continuously refine, we manage, we optimize that keyword list. Our vocabulary's changed. We are changing all of the time. There's some of the keywords, some of the probably main things that we've been talking about in the last 6 weeks weren't even in our language. words like social distancing and so on. So the world changes, so we want to make sure we refine, we manage, we measure, we optimize our keyword list all of the time. So moving on to the next slide, from a keyword goals point of view, you also need to think about the types of keyword goals. Are you looking for those keywords to improve your conversions, or are you looking for those to increase your branding? So what I've done there is I've just popped in a screenshot from a point of view of fence and shed paint, and you can see the B&Qs coming up there, and of course that is looking to improve conversions. Please don't think it won't apply if you don't actually sell online. Some of you will use the website at an earlier stage in the customer journey, but maybe from a point of view of conversions or selling, your customers then need to go to an offline source. A conversion can be anything that you classify it as from your unique position for your products or service. It could quite literally be that they sign up for the email because they realize through the keywords that what you've got to offer is useful to them, or it could be that you use keywords for branding. So if we move on to the next slide, thinking about how you would undertake that keyword discovery, and this is something that you need to do on an ongoing basis. Of course, it's going to depend on your resource, it's going to depend upon the size of the team. And often I'll speak to students and clients and they'll say, well, you know, it's something that goes by the by. It will, unless you put a provision in to do this on a regular basis. Unless it's something that you say, we will undertake this search every 3 months, we will look at this every Friday, we will look at this every month. But what we want to do is just make sure we put this as a regular activity to develop those ideas for the SEO content. And then, of course, any kind of information to optimize all of our paid search. But also, really importantly, looking at the keyword discovery, we want to make sure if there's anything else that can enhance all aspects of the marketing mix. So looking across all of our tactics, this could be something that changes the nature of the products and services. So if you think about what people have been searching for in the last couple of weeks and how that has led to some companies delivering, or that has led to some companies starting something on a mobile basis, because that is how the customers are changing. So if we could see constantly that people are looking for, I don't know, I'll use an example from my own point of view, cat litter delivery. If you were a local farm shop, maybe that's something that you start to do. So using the keyword discovery, using the SEO content, you've then used that to change your actual marketing mix. You've used that to change the type of product, the type of service that you offer. So just make sure that you're looking at that holistically. Make sure you're looking at your overall keyword discovery of how one can benefit the other. So if we move on to the next slide, what that would bring us on to is how we do it. Now, it's fairly simple. Don't overcomplicate that. From a keyword discovery, brainstorm your ideas is a really useful way. So whether that's just yourself, whether that is with even your friends and family, I'll often find when I'm working on client strategies, I will say to friends and family, what would you search for if you were looking for this? You will be surprised what people come up with, sort of different variations. For example, I think the example I gave about being broken into, if I was to ask, say, 20 people what they would search for in response to improving their home security, they would all come up with something different. So we want to get those ideas and we also want to get those variations. But think also about locations. What I said before about location-based search that's being sort of influenced by voice-activated search, also being influenced by how much we're using our mobiles, how much through various apps, through various platforms, we're also using location enabled services, enabled service platforms. We want to make sure that we have included those locations. People will be searching for that for their local areas, whether the local areas are narrow, whether they're regional and so on. Only you would know that through your products and services. So thinking next on the next slide about how we move towards different keyword types and how we distinguish the difference between short tail keywords. So keywords fall into two separate categories, short tail keywords and long tail keywords. Now, depending on levels of volume, relevance, competition, depending on the keyword goals that you've got, you may decide that long tail keywords are within your keyword goals, or perhaps short tail keywords. What the next slide does is it gives us some examples of short tail keywords and long tail keywords. Sorry, not examples, gives us some differences between the two. So the short tail keywords here, what we're thinking of is they will tend to have high search volume. They will have more competition. And of course, this is going to be determined by your resources overall. So there will also be more general overall. And we need to think about that they, as a rule, because of that high competition, because of that high search volume, they will also have those lower conversion rates, because you'll be sort of swimming in that bigger pool. Whereas with long tail keywords, we get a little bit more narrow. There's a little bit more of a niche, but we of course have then got that lower search volume. There's lower competition and more specific, but that would afford us essentially some higher conversion rates. So thinking about some examples of them on the next slide, that you would short tail keywords, if you were potentially searching for dementia care, it would be care agency, dementia care. Longer tail keywords, of course, you can see that that would then narrow that down to be specialist dementia care in Birmingham, care providers, dementia specialists, and so on. And here we start to really understand why understanding our customers, understanding the journey, understanding what matters to them, understanding like at the core of that what their problems are, will then potentially help us to feed into that those long tail keywords and hopefully afford us those sort of more improved conversion rates. So when we start to sort of delve into this, if we move on to the next slide, what we can then do is refine the keyword list. And I mentioned this a second ago, we want to look at search volume and we want to look at level of competition. So we want to review each of those potential keyword candidates, take a look at how many times they're searched for and their levels of competition. So thinking of that on the next slide, in terms of search volume, it's just literally the number of searches that do occur for a specific word or term during that set time. So it's usually that month. It can reflect interest in a topic and how it fluctuates over time. And what we can do here is use that in our keyword research to then assess the potential traffic that we're going to get for a given keyword. Whereas with a competition, if we look at the next slide, what we're thinking of there is just how many times and how many times it's searched for, how many index pages there are of that content in Google. So thinking along those lines, it will show us how difficult it's going to be to be able to rank for that keyword. So based on that search volume, it's going to tell us how much competition there is overall, how likely you are to be able to rank for it. You know how much budget you've got, you know how much resources you've got, you know if that's realistic. Essentially, you know if you want to join that race or not. Do you belong in that arena, or will you refine that, and will you prefer to sort of look more at your longer tail keywords and potentially concentrate on a more narrow and niche area. So if we move on to the next slide from keyword competition, there is a vast amount of keyword research tools that are also available to help you, and I've just put a few examples. The businesses out there know how important keyword research is. They know it's the sort of major category in search engine optimization. So they're developing the sophistication of these all of the time. There is no one size fits all. I would suggest that you do some research, you read your blogs in terms of the pros and the cons of the different keyword research tools. It's of course also going to depend upon how okay you are with using them. It's going to depend upon what budget you've got. Some of them are free. Some of them offer a certain amount of either users or a certain amount of features for free. Do just please be aware with any kind of tools or platforms like this, if you do sign up for free trials and some of the features are behind the paywall, just be really aware of making sure that you cancel the free trial. What I don't want you to do 30 days later is find something in your bank that's come out and you don't recognise it. But just take a look at some of the keyword research tools that can help you to build that picture overall. Google Trends there, if we just move on to the next slide, just something that I do want to mention. Google AdWords Keyword Planner, and then we'll look at Google Trends. So Google AdWords Keyword Planner, of course you would use this, and this is provided as a service for paid search essentially, but what it can do is it can also help you with organic efforts in that it helps you to just look and analyze those search volume. It is a tool there to sell that advertising, but it will also give you the opportunity to take some forecasts. see whether that traffic is spiking, see whether that traffic is decreasing, and so on. Let's just think about that in context. I did some work for a restaurant a while ago, and if we just can think for a second about the sheer amount of searches that have increased for being vegan, local vegan restaurants, vegan parties, and so on. And also the restaurants have seen more and more sort of gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free. So we just want to see what's changing, but it will also give us multiple keyword lists, so that will help us to generate new ideas overall. So when we are at that brainstorming session, I would definitely recommend that you tap into the Google AdWords keyword planner. It'll also, if you are doing the paid search, it'll give you ad group ideas. So when you do start to undertake those paid campaigns, you'll be able to get those ad groups, you'll be able to get those categories, and so on. So moving on to thinking about Google Trends, also what we can do is look at Google Trends over time. And this is a particular search for care homes that I just looked at over the past 5 years. And what we can see is there's a very sort of clear correlation in terms of, or pattern, if you like, of how that works over time. Understandably, you can see that dip is at Christmas time. So December, we don't get that many people searching for care homes and so on, but then we see that rise back up. Potentially people have got to the end of the year, stressful Christmases, maybe met with family and so on. And again, this is about understanding our customers and understanding the journey. What this does is it helps us with our peaks and troughs. Obviously we're in a really strange time at the moment, and we might see things that are a little bit out of the ordinary because of the pandemic. But with Google Trends, what we can see is, oh yeah, there are products and services. We see that peak in August, or we see that dip at Christmas time, and this can massively help us. Now, for example, let's just think about when the weather goes cold and people then are searching for winter coats. Last week when the weather was really nice, just think about how it would spike for garden furniture and so on. So we can understand that over time. We can understand, you know, that people are going to restaurants at Christmas, they're looking for Christmas night out venues and so on. So taking a look at whatever product and service you offer, this will help you again in terms of taking your foot off the pedal. And the opposite of that, you can look at Google Trends. So if we move on from that slide, there's also, through Google Trends, what we can also do is get some ideas for related queries. So we may be sometimes we can get a little bit narrowing our thinking about our own products and services. We're very close to our own businesses and our own offerings. And what this can do is give you care homes. We'll give you some suggestions: care homes near me, nursing homes near me, CCTV in care homes. And this was something that actually happened with a client of mine. They would see the spike whenever there was anything in the news, potentially about really bad news about care homes, standard slipping, or even abuse in care homes. They would see the spike of searches using keywords for CCTV in care homes and so on. So this will give us those related queries, and this is really useful. Excuse me one second. This is really useful in terms of giving us those ideas and how they potentially change over time. So I definitely recommend that you tap into that. A tool that I find useful, and again gives you a certain number of free features before you start to need to pay, is also SEM Rush. So SEM Rush is available online, and this will help you to generate keyword information and also to understand your competitors' rankings and also check any referring sites from an authority link point of view. What I find particularly useful about SEM Rush is that it allows you to compare domain to domain. So you can take a look at your rankings and where you rank for various keywords compared directly to one of your competitors, and you can see there how they rank. You can see where you're losing ground, where you're gaining ground, and so on. You can see potentially they corner that market in terms of those keywords, so we'll leave them where they are and we won't go after that, but we will potentially look at our own longer tail keywords. It'll also let you see a lot of rankings and how they're changing over time, and it will let you see, depending on the features and whether it's paid for, it will let you look at paid search activity and also local search activity. So just make sure that you take a look at SEM Rush, have a little bit of a play around with it. And know in normal times as marketeers, we're always really busy, and it's hard to find that time to sort of look around those platforms. A lot of the time when you do trials with those platforms, the sales teams want to talk to you and want to give you a tour, or even having a video that lets you see it. Potentially at the moment, if you are distance working at home, it's just a time to have a look at the tools that are out there and see if they can help you. So it's starting to bring us to the end now. That brings us, if we move on to the next slide, what I did want to do is just point you towards the resources. So just to reiterate, the recording will be available at that link there. As I mentioned, in terms of your on-page SEO factors, that would be a session in itself. So I did use the one that I find the most useful and the most kind of logical and straightforward is from moz.com there, and there's a massive amount of resources on the Google blog. So at the moment, if that is something that you wanted to look into, I would suggest that you tap into the Webmasters Google blog. And also Search Engine Journal is a massively useful research to look into if there's any particular areas that you think, I want to sort of have a little bit more of a deeper look into that. So just wanted to place those resources. It brings us to the end. Just want to thank you for listening in. Thank you for joining in today. It's nice to see other humans. I'm happy to take any questions now, and we'll unmute. If anybody's got any questions or any comments, just make sure that I'm unmuting. Okay, I don't seem to be able to unmute Jonathan, so I'm wondering whether that's something to do with preferences.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself, Sue, I think. Sorry to interrupt you, but if people have got questions, they can just ask and unmute themselves.
Yeah, okay. So is there any questions, any comments, any thoughts? So any suggestions as well in terms of potentially anything that you're doing at the moment or you found helpful that you're doing recently?
Sue, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hi, Barry.
Hi. For me personally, it was really good. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and it's certainly, we like you just said, we've got a bit more time on our hands to focus on this stuff that does get lost on the day-to-day usual environment, doesn't it? So
it does.
Yeah, so for me personally, thank you very much. I'm going to take away this, and it's stuff that I always say I can action straight away. So yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. I think that the other issue from a feedback point of view that I'm getting from clients and even just personal family and friends is that everything that's happening and things that are going on in the world and in your home lives, some people are saying to me that they're finding it hard to concentrate. And I think some of the things like the link building and the citation, potentially the kind of low hanging fruit and quick wins that you can maybe do at the moment as well. And that is something that we sort of wanted to concentrate on. I know some people are sort of doing multiple things at home as well as trying to work. So I'm glad that there's some things that you can action straight away.
Okay.
I think that there's a question in the chat as well. So I've just had a question typed out to me that in terms of how do you decide what you can do internally or what you should outsource, from Kerry Edwards, who's watching privately. I would suggest that in terms of internally and what you should outsource, it's just almost kind of going back to a situation analysis. It's almost going back to a micro analysis and just looking at what you've got within the organization, what you've got in terms of skill sets, what you've got in terms of budgets overall. I don't know what platforms, what software and hardware that you're using, and then just taking an honest look really. I would also suggest, from a point of view of deciding what to outsource, there's a lot of wider reading from academics and just industry commentators about the T-shaped marketeer and how building teams of the future can really be helped by the concept of the T-shaped marketeer that builds a full complement of skills within a digital marketing team. I know just in terms of how much more time people are spending on the mobile phones and how much we spend on the internet, there's a lot of companies who are thinking, yeah, we need to resource up in this area, but what do we need to do? Do we need to throw a lot of money at an agency? Do we need to take on a whole new team? So I would suggest that you read around the T-shaped marketeer, because that can be really helpful. Are you welcome, Kerry? Sorry, Kerry's typing that question privately just in case there's any confusion. Is there anything further in terms of questions or comments? No? Okay, well, we'll bring the session to an end there. So just to reiterate, it is available as a recording. So if anybody wanted to take another look at that, that will be online within 24 to 48 hours. And thanks again for listening in. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.